welcome in on another special episode of I've Got a Theory with Henish. I've got my guest here, Lindsey. Lindsey,
hey guys.
welcome on. And Lindsey is a real estate professional. We've known each other for like 10 plus years, but I'm happy to be connected with you in this platform so we could talk a little bit more.
Yeah, most definitely, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. So a lot of times I say, okay, Lindsey's a real estate professional, but we're not going to talk about real estate. But today we are, because I do like your theory. So tell us what your theory is.
Thank you. Well, okay, so I have this theory, okay? I got this idea and it's based on experience. I got this theory that the best way, the fastest way to sell a house for at or above market value is to list it low.
Okay. Can you give an example? Have you done this recently and it was somewhat effective?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for, about 13 years because I studied under this guy who wrote How to Sell Your Home in 5 Days.
Okay.
His name is Bill Efros, and I just kind of studied under him about 13 years ago, and I decided to try it out. So back when me and you were working together at the nation's 10th largest subprime lender,
Yeah.
accredited home lenders. I also had like a night job that I would work till 1 a.m. Listing short sales.
Okay.
And I would list I think I listed about 65 of them. So I had a little wiggle room. I had some play space to experiment. So I started experimenting with this idea of listing it low, and they would just sell for really, really high.
Okay.
So then, the bigger jump was to do it on retail clients who did not have a jacked up house and who want to get top dollar for their home. So, I started doing it with that. So my most recent example is a house that, it could have appraised for anywhere from 525 to 575, and I was able to get an offer at 590 doing this.
So what did you list it at?
Yeah. So I actually listed it. Now, I do not have this down to a science, but I thought, you know what, let's just go really low. And I started it at 415, and I ended up bumping it up really quickly to 449. And I wish that I would have started it probably like 474.9.
Why? Because you said it sold for $599.
Well, we got the offer of 590, and then the appraiser decided to be belligerent and brought the appraisal in at 575.
That's still not bad. So what would have made the difference if you listed it at 425 and you're saying you should have listed it at 475? Why would you say you should have listed it higher if you got a desired effect of $150,000 over your list price?
Exactly. So it's always a fine line. Okay, so you want to not tick people off, and you also want to, not waste too many people's time. And of course, everybody has an opportunity. You're not wasting anyone's time, really. However, you don't want to get overwhelmed with all of the calls. So me, as a mom of 2 under 2, I definitely was completely overwhelmed with the volume of calls. So anywhere from, I would say, 25 to 50 calls a day. At least.
So then do you stop accepting offers at a certain point, or do you just keep getting them coming in and then let them know, hey, by the way, this is where the price is trending? Do you just keep adjusting the price? How do you handle that? Because that can be annoying. It's impossible, and you don't want to be the person that doesn't call people back either.
Yeah. So I kind of got it down to a system because I had been doing it quite a bit lately. So if I'm getting too overwhelmed with calls, I would bump up the price. So I think I did like 3 price adjustments, just bump it up. It was still too many calls. That's why I say I wish I would have started it higher. But I just let everybody know there's a family emergency. It needs to sell very quickly. this is what it's listed at right now. If you're interested, go check it out and, send us an offer. We'd love to do business.
It was a vacant house.
Yes.
And
but if it's not a vacant house, you can still have luck with just doing showings on the weekends.
Just showing on the weekend, but that's a lot of people that come through, and that's tough with COVID. But assuming we're not in COVID time and people can come through, then you're doing a bunch of showings, you're getting a bunch of offers. Does this work for higher end properties? There's no shortage of properties in San Diego that are over $1 million, but there are a lot less buyers for it. For example, I'm selling a house right now that's at about 1.3 million. Would it make sense for me to list it at 1.19 million? Or 999,000. What do you look? What's the strategy? Is it 90%? Is it 80%?
I think it's even lower than that. I did one in October, November, around there. So that one it would appraise anywhere from, let's say, 900 to 1.1 million. You know how appraisers are?
Yeah.
Every appraiser is going to come in at a different place, but it was recently appraised for a refi at 1.1, and then other valuations were, kind of all over the block for that. And I had some agents come at me and say, "Oh, the house is worth, $850 or $950." You know how agents are too. Everyone has their own kind of
their opinion, right?
An opinion. So we ended up listing it. And this is according to the Bill Uffros method. We listed it at $649,900, which is crazy low.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have listed it way higher due to the same thing. I had to hire a temporary assistant to get back to everybody. But it sold for $979.
So then let me ask you this. I had a guy come into my office earlier that I'm working with. And he's a flipper, and he has sold a bunch of flips. And he was under the impression that if you set a list price and someone comes in at that list price, you have to accept it. Have you ever heard of that law? Heard anything like that?
There are some people under that bent. So some people kind of have that idea in their mind ingrained. I think it's people who are more old school.
Yeah.
But when it comes down to it, the seller does not have to accept any offer they're not comfortable with. Right?
I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. So if they're getting multiple offers and you have talk of somebody who's going to be sending in an offer over the list price soon, it's in the seller's best interest to wait for that offer to materialize, correct?
Right.
So, if somebody's going to give you, asking price and say, "I demand that you accept this offer because of this, theory or whatever." Well, listing it on the lower side is a very effective marketing tool that many agents do employ. And to be honest, it just seems like the fastest and most efficient way to get a really high offer.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And it depends on the price point, right? I've done this before with $3 million properties. I remember a couple of years ago, maybe a year ago, I had a listing in Rancho Santa Fe.
Oh, really?
And the guy had to sell, right? And I interviewed with him. He's like, "Okay, I get why my attorney recommended you. You're good, obviously." And I was like, "Well, let's get this thing sold." And he's like, "Okay, well, the appraisal that I have came in at 325, so let's list it at 32." I was like, "No, that doesn't work." I was like, "I'll list it at 2.9. I'll list it at 2.9 if you want me to sell this thing, because I know you want to sell it right away, or do you want to test the market and see how long it sits in the market for 3.2 and then make $100,000 price adjustments?"
Wow.
Right. So he's like, "Well, let me think about it." And he got back to me and he's like, "Okay, I agree with you at 2.9. I was like, "Well, let's also turn this up one more notch, because I know we need to sell this thing. Let's advertise that we're going to drop the price $50,000 a week until it sells." He's like, "What? That's nuts." He's like, "Let me think about it." He called me back a couple hours later. He's like, "Okay, I like that idea, but let's do $100,000 a week."
Oh, dang, up the ante even more.
And so, sure enough, by the second week, and we dropped it 200,000 by that point, we got really good offers, and then we wrapped it up and got it sold very quickly for a property of that price point in Rancho Santa Fe. That was dated, half the air conditioning systems didn't work, needed some work on it. So yeah, the buyer trying to come back and said, oh, we need a $75,000 credit for X, Y, and Z. We're like, you just got this thing at like a, $400,000 below market based on the appraisal that we had. So
Wow. Okay. So you sold it for 2.8?
I think it went for
Is that what you're
2.7.
saying?
Yeah, it went for 2.7 because I listed at 2.9. I did 2 price reductions and it went for like 2.7.
Okay.
Something like that. So, it was kind of the same tactic, but not, but there's very few buyers for that, right? I mean, in that course of 2 weeks or 3 weeks or whatever, we had like 4 showings total, but there's only one buyer for a $3 million house that's 8,000 square feet in Rancho Santa Fe.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it's a lot easier when you have like cheaper houses. So that same flipper, I rarely sell off deals, but this one, I just had to sell off for various reasons. And he's like, well, let's list it at 720. I'm like, let's list it at 699.
Uh-huh.
Right. Cause like just over that 700, you lose that conforming loan limit.
Absolutely.
And so now everyone that says, okay, my max is 700, you're losing those people. I was like, I'd rather have them figure it out and then beg, borrow, and steal the extra money if they can't afford the loan to go over.
Oh yeah. And I mean, I don't know if well, obviously you've been in lending. We used to work at a lender, but, and I used to be a loan officer as well. But I mean, all the loan officers, they want to be conservative with their pre-approval letter. So I know how loan officers work. They're like, okay, pick a number that's comfortable for you, and then I'll give you, and if you can do it, and if there's some wiggle room, I'll give you that number. Right. But if you're coming in and you're like, max me out, please, they're not going to max you out. They're going to give you a little bit under because they know when push comes to shove, there's going to be something that comes up, where they really need to max you out down the road. So they're not going to do that up front. They're going to wait till, it's time.
When they go shopping and you're like, crap, I just got in contract for $50,000 over my approval. Can you help me?
Exactly.
Yep. So how do I tweak this DTI? Do I need to buy down my rate to get a lower rate so I can qualify for the debt ratio, right? And things like that.
Yeah. And what's funny is it's just kind of standard procedure to turn in a pre-approval letter with the exact amount of your offer, and then counters come along and it goes into contract for a bit higher, $10, $15, $20,000 higher. Yet there's not usually like an updated pre-approval letter with the higher amount. It's like, let the chips fall where they may during escrow.
Right. But that's because usually there's a good partnership between a realtor and a lender that says, hey, I'm putting in this offer at this price. Give me a pre-approval at that price. Cause I know they're approved for X. I only need X minus 30,000 because I'm a little less.
Yeah. So at any rate, listing agents are kind of flexible with that. They see the offer coming in higher and they're like, okay,
so how do you have that conversation with the seller, like a retail seller, non-distressed, non-short sale, that always thinks, right? 90% of sellers believe that their house is the nicest on the market and they're nicest on the street. How do you convince them to price their house below what it'll sell for, knowing what you know about how this works?
Well, I mean, all I can do is show examples. All I can do is just share past experiences and anecdotes about how this worked for other people, how it's working for people in the neighborhood. You can pull up data with this house was listed here and it sold for here.
Right.
You can pull any of those on the MLS and just show them how this is working.
And so can you think of any times where you've had that conversation with the seller and how did it went?
Yeah, I mean, there's people who just cannot wrap their head around it. And those people, honestly, they're going to, say, oh, I want 525. And if you list it for 525, maybe you'll get 515. It depends on what the comps are, of course. It depends on what the demand is. But maybe if you would have listed it lower, you could have got 575.
Yeah, and the reason for that is what? Because I have my theory on why, and I'm sure you do as well. Why do they do that?
So I have a degree in psychology.
Okay.
So there's a lot to be said for the psychological process of the emotional buying decision. So when you have somebody walking in that door and they have a budget of 600, but the house is listed at 525, and they walk in that door, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been looking at other houses for 525. This is amazing. This is so much better. I want this house. This is the one. And then they get they get vested into this
That's
offer
exactly right. They get
process.
the emotional investing into it.
Yeah.
They can see themselves
So,
living there. I like this backyard. I can't wait for my kids to be here. Da da da. Right?
oh yeah, and they'll come back and measure, see if their furniture is going to fit. They'll, in their head, they're already decorating.
Yeah, no,
They're
I heard
already
that yesterday. I was at a showing, and then the clients were already measuring out stuff and figuring out which furniture would fit in which room and where the Christmas tree would go. And I was like, I think I'm going to see an offer on this. And sure enough, I did.
Was that the first showing or the second showing?
It's been on the market for a couple of weeks. It was the client's second showing.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
but
makes sense.
this was a more expensive home, and the clients were trying to get 30,000 more than the next best house on the block.
Oh, gotcha.
So they wanted to list 30,000 over the comp, but yeah,
Uh-huh.
the strategy should have been listed. So the comp sold at 137. We should have listed at 129. So instead, they demanded that I listed at 139. I was like, all right, we'll do that, but knowing that we're going to drop at 50,000 a week until it sells. And so we did that.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
powerful.
now we've dropped it 100. And now it's at 129. And all of a sudden, we got a lot of traction. But if we
Uh-huh.
had hit the market at 129, could we have gotten a bunch of offers and then eventually driven it up over 1.3? Probably.
Uh-huh.
Probably.
Yeah, that's powerful. I've had that idea before and done the like drastic price reductions. Um, and I mean, it can be hit or miss. But I wanted to circle back to that house in Rancho Santa Fe for
Okay.
$3 million because
Okay.
it just so happens I have a house in Rancho Santa Fe that was appraised for anywhere from 3 million to 3.2 million, and we would take 2.7.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of discussion on, what's the pricing, what's the strategy on selling this? So are we even going to, put it on the market?
What do you think? Can you put it up at 249 and see all the people that want it at 2.5 and they'll buy it? The difficulty is that, you get that pricing pyramid, right? You get that pyramid that there's only very few buyers that buy homes that are over 2 or 3 or 10 million.
Yeah.
Very few versus the number of buyers that'll buy at 500,000. That's everyone. Because even rich people that can afford a $10 million house would buy a $500,000 house if it was the right price.
Yeah. Just as a rental even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So every cheap property has a buyer, but very few expensive properties have a buyer. So that's where, there's like a curve of like when pricing low is a great strategy for multiple offers and multiple buyers versus when it's
so
not.
bell curve, right?
And I think it's probably, depending area specific, it's probably right around $1 million in San Diego, right? Homes under $1 million, if you price them low, you'll get multiple buyers. But homes much over $1 million, maybe over $1.5 million or $2 million, even at your price range, it's tough because you're hoping that 2, 3, 4 buyers come through that are a good fit, and then they are willing to pay you the price that you want.
Yeah. The whole theory of Bill Efros was that there's 3 real buyers for a house. All you have to do, you can have hundreds of people come through as long as you're getting the 3 real buyers.
Yeah.
So those buyers, they might not even know they're interested in that part of town, but they see that house, it shows up, because they're doing the little search algorithm. It pops up for whatever reason. They get into the house. Then they're like, wow, this could really work for me. So they're flexible about what price they're able to pay. If they're approved for X amount higher, they're going to go X amount higher.
Would you put it in the confidential remarks? And for people that aren't realtors listening, confidential remarks are only remarks that realtors can read from other realtors. Do you put it in there? Hey, this property was purposely priced low. We expect it to sell for significantly above list.
Well, I mean, I definitely am comfortable sharing that information, but
you wouldn't put it in the confidential remarks, like, hey, we priced this at $499, but we expect it to sell for $575. Bring us your best offer over list.
So I definitely,
not the settling price. You might say, hey, we know we've priced this lower than market value. We expect it to sell for over list price.
Yeah, I don't have a problem disclosing that.
Do you put it in the confidential remarks is the question?
I'm trying to think. I tend to say, we have offers of, it just depends on what stage we're at in the process, but I don't have a problem saying.
You're almost auctioning it without it being like a live auction or a virtual auction. You're just saying, hey, bring it in. Maybe you're saying you'll review offers after 3 or 5 days or whatever.
Sure.
right? Because last thing you want is someone say, okay, here's my 525 offer, and the offer expires at 5 p.m. today.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, and that's another thing. It expires, so I mean, you can't hold them to it.
Right.
But are they going to be interested tomorrow? Yeah.
Yeah.
They didn't find another house, tonight.
Yeah. Well, that's the kind of concern. I was trying to put that conversation with one of my sellers. They're like, well, is it a problem if we counter and stuff? I was like, there's always a slim chance that something new comes up today that the buyer says, oh, maybe I'll go see that house instead. And if they happen to fall in love with that instead, there's that concern. It's a very slim chance, but I always like to put it out there. Like I was like, okay, 99% chance they're not going to find anything else, but there's a 1% chance something new pops up that they say, oh, we would be interested to see that. Let's rescind our offer.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean, that could happen even if the offer hasn't expired yet.
Yeah.
You can try and make something happen with it, and they're like, oh, we found something else. Ignore the offer.
Yeah, no doubt. Right. No, for sure. And it's happened. I've had that happen before with a deal just recently where they're like, okay, we're going to put in an offer. And then like, never mind. We went and saw another house and they like that one better. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's always
Thanks
so
for teasing me with that. Don't tease me like that.
Yeah, because then you're telling the seller and people are getting excited.
Yeah, right. They're like, sweet, I'm going to get this house. Well, cool. Well, Lindsey, I appreciate you coming on and sharing that theory with me. I think that's really a smart theory. And I think a lot of realtors know it, but to put it into practice is a whole nother thing.
Right. Because if everyone was doing that, people would just kind of have really no bearing on where to start in their search.
Plus you got to admit, from a buyer's perspective, it can be annoying, right?
Oh yeah,
and because if your budget, if you see a house for $499, your budget is $515, and then it ends up selling for $570, we're like, crap! I just spent a week praying and wishing I could get that house. Yeah. Now I got to do it again.
Yeah, but there's telltale signs. For example, I always try and get an appraisal. Kind of the most that it would sell for.
You trust an appraisal more than your own CMA?
Well, it speaks more than my own CMA. So if I have an appraisal on hand that I can forward an agent that says the house just appraised at $1 million, $800,000, whatever it is, and you put that in the remarks, you put that in the advertising. The house is listed for $699. It just appraised at $800. Then people kind of know what you would like.
So you put that in the remarks. Hey, we appraised it at this price, but it's listed at $699.
Yeah.
So that's in the remarks. So that basically indicates to them that it's going to sell for over list price.
Yeah.
And you're adjusting the list price throughout the listing period as well. You're kind of tweaking it up.
Yeah. I mean, I try and kind of weed out the amount of calls as we go, because I mean, it's great when I'm only listing one house at a time, but if I have multiple listings going on, I can't keep up.
What do you feel about range pricing?
That's another thing, is that it helps. It definitely helps the range. It helps the advertising if there is a range. However, when the listing syndicates all over the internet, it's only going to show you the top of the range.
Annoying, right?
So it didn't used to be that way, though.
Yeah.
They had adjusted it early on, years ago now, to make it only show the top range. So I always list it for the lower half of the range, the lower part. And in the comments, I describe that it's listed from $649 to $799, for example.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So, that the range is annoying, because I'd say, half of buyers do come from retail sites, and that's where they're shopping on, regardless of if their agent sets them up on an MLS search. They're like, it's still easier to use Redfin, or it's still easier to use Zillow.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm still going to be on it. So then they're not seeing that there might be a low range to that price.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Some really good, interesting insight there. I don't get to have these kind of conversations with the realtors often. So it's nice to hear a perspective on pricing and sales strategy and things like that, because yeah, you've done it. You've been working hard for years and years and years. And so now you know.
Yeah. Trial by error, you could say.
Nothing makes up for some good old-fashioned practice and experience, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Lindsey, thank you so much for joining me on another episode of I've Got a Theory. Please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Sounds good. Thanks, Henish.
Thanks.
Have a good one.